Hello tanks and tankettes, welcome to one of my replays, although it's not really going to be about me this particular battle. We're actually going to see most of this from different people's points of view. First off, we are going to jump in very short order to Strangers123, who is one of my platoon mates. Him and Beyond I both know through SGTA, and they are both in T2303s, which you may not be familiar with. It doesn't get seen very often, and this is it. It was a Clan Wars mini-campaign reward tank. It's a tier 7 reward tank, and it's not especially good. However, you're about to see one of its special features. It can drive backwards fairly quickly. Yeah, it accelerates backwards about as fast as it goes forwards. Not quite as fast, I think, and I think the top speed is also lower, but it's fast enough that it makes it that bit more manoeuvrable in some situations. The gun, however, is pretty terrible. It's the usual 76mm that you see on the tier 5 and 6 medium tanks, and at tier 7, as you can imagine, that's not particularly great. I think it does get limited matchmaking, but even so, it's not particularly brilliant. So we're on Himmelsdorf, and because we have a limited matchmaking game, I actually elected to take a Bert. Bert on Himmelsdorf's not terrible because of the high firing arc, though my performance is going to be terrible, so we won't dwell on that too much, I think. We'll mostly be watching what Strangers does, at least for the first 2/3 of the battle, say. So we've had not many tanks go up to the hill. Usually that's not great. As it's going to turn out, about 2/3 of the enemy team go on the hill versus 3 of our tanks, which is, I don't even know what percentage that would be, what fraction, but yeah, no, wait, 3 out of 15, I can do that. 1/5. 1/5 of our team. Okay, there we go. That wasn't so difficult. Numbers! I went into numbers. Hooray! Strangers and Beyond could have gone up, but these tanks are... well, you have to use them to flank. You can't face enemies frontally. Certainly not tier 8 enemies frontally, because this gun is just not up to snuff for that kind of playstyle. It just does not have the firepower. So yes, they could have gone up, but honestly, it wouldn't have made a difference looking at how this is, how this is working out just in the first couple of minutes. We would have needed at least an equal number of tanks to go up there, and the tanks that they had, I mean, they were aggressive, they pushed, they didn't just go up there and then decide that they were just going to sit up there and do nothing, because I've seen teams do that. You'll have a majority of the enemy team go up and then just kind of sit there twiddling their thumbs, at which point you either peek and try and kill them, or you just cap it out. Now there are 2 tank destroyers that came up to this northwest corner. That's what Strangers and Beyond are going for right now. Beyond's actually got some of his limited stock of HE shells loaded, because Hellcat armour, not really that tough. There was also a Dicamax there, again, not known for its armour, so rather than use some of his regular ammo, he decided to go for HE and get a bit more damage. Now Beyond and Strangers probably could have done better in sticking together for some of this battle, but it seemed from this point on, I mean, it is really the enemy's team to lose from this stage. They could goof sufficiently that our team can pull it back, because on numbers we're equal, and it will continue to be equal on numbers reasonably far along, but they are largely travelling en masse. They're going basically in a group and just sweeping up the friendly tanks, and it's really not going so well for our team, even though they are suffering some losses. You can see there the couple of tanks that did split off ended up getting picked off fairly easily. So we've jumped to my point of view, and yeah, I'm just desperately, I was trying to get to a position where I could support that corner. It's all too late, of course. I managed to get 1 shot off that wasn't even aimed. I'm about to fire my 2nd shot, and then I get counter-Berted. Yes, the enemy Bert manages to get me before I can get another shot off. So much for my contribution to the battle. Yes, that was pretty terrible. So back to Strangers, and he's just... this is tricky at this point. I mean, there's 1 tank left on the hill. The remaining friendlies are slightly more grouped together, but they are outnumbered and they are outgunned. We lost 2 tier 8 heavies on that hill in the initial engagement, so the firepower that's against the remaining tanks, I mean, we've got a Rheinmetall left who's just died, and we're now down to Strangers. a T71 and whatever that other tank is, which I can't quite see in Sony, because I'm doing this all in Sony Vegas. Don't usually do that because the preview quality is not particularly great, but for a more edited video I don't really have a lot of choice. So yeah, like I said, him and Beyond maybe could have done a better job of sticking together at this point, but honestly, would it have made a difference? Probably not. So there the Carnarvon on the hill is shooting him, and oh yeah, better get out of there. The rate of fire on this thing is pretty good, and usually if Wargaming gives pretty terrible penetration to a tank for its given tier, they tend to make up for it by giving it a better rate of fire. So you take something like, I don't know, the Chiri for example, which has got a really good DPM but not particularly good penetration, or the E25 to take a really extreme example, although the E25 works because of its mobility coupled with its extreme accuracy. It has one of the most accurate guns in the game at 0.3, which for a tier 7 tank destroyer is pretty exceptional. This thing, I don't know if the accuracy is quite as good, because obviously it is a medium tank. Anything with a turret tends to have worse accuracy than anything without a turret. It's just one of the bouncing mechanics Wargaming have decided on. Yeah, I mean, it's not great, but it's probably not the worst tank. Anyway, Beyond made the fatal choice, as it turns out, of trying to run away along the A line. They were trying to group up again, but Stranger's taking the road that he did, he was able to jink around a bit, and because it's not perfectly straight, once he got around a certain point he was out of line of fire. Beyond, on the other hand, he just made it to the corner and no further. Unfortunately he died at that point. But we're now down to 2 tanks, and it's not looking great. He actually comes up to try and help the T71 with the Carnarvon, but it turns out the T71 didn't need any help at all. T71 now sitting on 5 kills, who's probably the only player that's actually done well so far out of this battle. So Stranger's just looking to do maybe a few, just get a few shots off, do a little bit of damage. But this gun, yeah, even at the Rheinmetall he managed to bounce that shell. So this gun is lackluster. This gun is worse than the gun that the what is it, the 3002 DB gets, the short 88. Where you've got an unenviable choice of, was it 130 odd pen or 150 pen. It's basically the same choice of guns you get at the top end on the Jagdpanzer IV, only it's a tier higher, and the rate of fire and handling's worse. So yeah, the 3002 DB is not a tank I'm fond of. I don't think that's a tank anyone's especially fond of, but it might have 1 or 2 fans out there. So he is now circling back down. We know that at least there's 1 tank on the cap. The T71's down there as well. There's basically no chance of pulling this back at this point. But something must happen, right? I wouldn't just be showing this crushing loss on Himmelsdorf for no particular reason. Well, we'll come to that in reasonably short order. But this is one of those battles where I think it worked out the way it worked out, and as an individual, all 3 of us in the platoon, I'm not quite sure what we could have done to actually pull this back. Oh, yeah, he just spots as a tank destroyer there, so rather than drive out where he can be shot at, he decides he's gonna, well, he's gonna take his chances with this heavy tank, because it's gonna hurt less than a tank destroyer. And yeah, the T-34's got a big gun, but the Rheinmetall's got an even bigger gun. So he goes in and just tries to do some damage. I mean, he's decapped at least. Side and rear armor's really his only chance with this gun against the T-34, but the T-34 gets another shot in. And he's just trying to get a bit more damage at this point, so he's on his premium ammo. He's like, screw it, just gonna take this guy out. That's 1 less enemy tank. 3 versus 2, but the 3 are tier 8s versus 2, well, tier 7 scout tank. And a very badly damaged reward tank with a pretty terrible gun. So he's sitting in there as bait, and lo and behold, yep, there's the Rheinmetall. T-71 just whizzes past, and it's looking like it's going to be all over very, very soon. And yeah, there's the IS-3. Boom. And thus ends Strangers. However, we have 1 tank left alive. Now I should note at this point that the IS-6 and the IS-3 are platooned. That's not the best platoon in the world, because of course the IS-6 has limited matchmaking, so a bit risky for those guys, but as it turned out they ended up being top tier, so it worked out rather nicely for them. So he's just going to run at this point. Surely the sensible thing would be that the enemies would cap. And we come, by the way, to the whole point of this replay. Yes, this is going to be one of those to cap or not to cap replays. Except it's going to be, for a change, not from a friendly team's point of view, but from the enemy's team point of view, whether they should have capped or gone after somebody. Well, it's really all down to common sense. We often say, and we often get annoyed when we're playing on the stream, or even I personally, I know Circon does, Fosh, you know, if you have a game where there are still hit points to be had from the enemies, there are still kills to be had, and you have a decisive advantage, you have a really decisive advantage, and you get a couple of people that just decide, screw it, we're going to cap. And everybody suffers because everybody is that little bit worse off, and especially the people that could have maybe gotten a bit more damage and maybe a few more kills. But it's not always the case that you want to definitely say no cap, kill all, as the immortal phrase goes. Sometimes the more sensible course of action is actually to cap, and it kind of comes down to the actual circumstances in battle, and it comes down to common sense. And unfortunately that's not something that many players of World of Tanks seem to really apply to their playing of World of Tanks. Maybe just because they're not thinking about the game in that way, or maybe just because they are somebody that generally lacks common sense, and there are quite a few such people in the world, as I'm sure we all know. So, although it is usually preferable to win by killing all of the enemy team, that will usually get you the best result. And as we all know, you know, we've all experienced battles where it's one team captures within 4 minutes with most of both teams still left alive. Nobody wins in that circumstance because everybody's scores are terrible. And back to the action at hand. Yeah. And I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but it's Pupilkani, or we'll just call him Pup, has just decided that, you know, we know there's one on the cap, he just decided to go gung-ho. I mean, we know the IS-6 and the IS-3, and there's the IS-6. Well, they were chasing him, and they've left this Rhymatool alone, so he took total advantage of that and decided, you know what, he was just going to, those misses, he was just going to YOLO around, he was just going to have fun. What is there to lose at this point? So, as I was saying, yes, people that lack common sense, you just have to look at the minimap, you have to look at the team situation. There are times on the stream when we're having a game, and it's pretty infrequent, but there are times when we decide, yeah, actually we'd better cap if we want this to be a win. It maybe won't be a good win, but it's preferable to not winning. And again, a miss, a very lucky miss for young Pup in his T71. He might not be young, but you know, if you're going to call him Pup, I suppose. Well, I'm going to call him Pup. We might as well call him the young Pup. He might be, I don't know, a 50-year-old truck driver from Stockholm for all I know. Just, I don't even know where that came from. That was just a thing my brain came up with, but an example of who he might be. Anyway, but young Pup here, he's now going to sit in the cap, and the timer is ticking down all the time. This situation we have here, where we have these two platoon mates, it wasn't even that one stayed behind and one went hunting, it's that they both went hunting for a tank that could comfortably run rings around them on a city map. And that was absolutely not the common sense thing to do. That was the least sensible thing that they could have done. And they left the Rhymatool alone, and the Rhymatool admittedly was unlucky. Pup had a great deal of luck there in that the Rhymatool had 2 chances to fire at him, both missed. The shots that were taken at him from the hill, because we had both shots taken at him from the hill, both missed. And we're rapidly getting down on time now, so are they going to be fast enough to get back? Himmelsdorf isn't an especially big map, but the fact that they decided they were going to get this last kill rather than cap and ensure the victory, well, there's maybe still time. One of them might turn up and kill him. But the whole point of this replay is basically use your common sense. Look at the situation that's at hand. And there we go, one has turned up. They are trying to cap now, but it's not going to happen. There's not enough time. There's that's going to be, because this is an encounter battle, it's going to be at least a minute and a half. We're down to, what, less than 50 seconds now? 40 seconds. So they have absolutely screwed up, and they made absolutely the wrong call given the circumstances. Just look at what is on the enemy team. In this case, from their point of view, it's a fast light tank that can run away from them very easily. And given the nature of the map, given it's an encounter battle, given it takes longer to capture, they should have just stuck to their guns. They should have just capped. Or at least one of them should have stayed behind to cap. Maybe one goes off and tries to hunt down Pup. But nope, they both went off, and that screwed them royally, and it's going to be a draw. So yes, well done those pair. They basically threw away a victory. So sometimes, although, like as I've said, generally it's preferable in terms of XP, in terms of your credits, to try and kill as many of the enemy team as possible, preferably all of the enemy team. That's not always going to be true. And as we'll see from the scores on this team, yeah, Pup did quite well for himself. I mean, it should have been a win for the enemy team. It looked like it was going to be a win for the enemy team. And then those top two players in their IS-3 and IS-6 just utterly threw away all common sense and decided they were going to hunt down a T-71 that could run away from them all day long. And it's not like this was an open map where they could sit and potentially shoot at somebody going across the open. No, this was a closed city map, and it absolutely was the wrong thing to do, and they paid the price. Pup actually walked away with, on a draw, 1,554 base XP, nearly 4,000 damage. He had a top gun, and I don't even know what else. A defender and a high caliber medal. There we go. If I mouse over the thing, it will actually tell me. The enemy pair of tanks that were remaining were top of their team, but less than 1,000 base XP between them. I think Pup was the winner there, even though it was a draw. With, I guess that would be courageous resistance, he actually came away with a very good result. He drove nearly 8 kilometers in that battle and made those pair of enemy heavies look like utter fools because they did absolutely the wrong thing. So this was the kind of circumstance where, hell yes, you cap. Because otherwise, you end up with this kind of situation. And myself and Strangers and Beyond were sat there watching this thinking, this is stupid. Why? I mean, we were utterly entertained by it, but we were just thinking, why on earth would they do this? This is just by far the least sensible option that they could have picked, and yet it's the option they did pick, and it cost them the victory. And it gave Pup a very good result at the end of the day, so it worked out in our team's favour, kind of, even though nobody really won. Both teams actually lost. It was greed on the part of the enemy team that actually cost them that. And I say greed because, you know, as I've said, you want the XP and you want the credits, sure, but you also want the win sometimes. And it's just applying that common sense and deciding at what point is it more likely that you will win by cap, or is it more likely that you will be able to kill everybody safely without too much risk? Because sometimes it looks a bit iffy and you don't know either way, and maybe in those times it's safer to cap. In this situation, it absolutely was the right thing to cap, and they just absolutely did not, and that cost them dearly. So there you go. I guess we could call this one a PSA, and it was largely from not even my point of view. It was a terrible game for me. I was actually right down at the bottom of the score list on our team, so yes, this was not really about me in any way, shape or form. It was really a PSA. It was when to cap and when not to cap, and just use your common sense, goddammit, because not many people seem to do that in this game. So, if you enjoyed the message of this replay, if maybe not the actual content, although I think it was fairly entertaining watching them chase around madly after a T-71, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can subscribe to my channel, and, as always, stay tuned for more.